Earthlings, welcome along to another edition of Still Alive, and I'm happy to report that we are. And so it's always nice, Ronnie, to see that little box open in the green room, and there you are.
Yeah, I mean, people must have been worried about us being alive, since we didn't have a show last week. I was wondering if they thought we might have croaked it.
Yes,
unless you posted something to reassure them.
Yeah, one day I'm expecting the box to open. It's going to be Louise with an evil grin on her face or something. You know?
So. Laughing hysterically. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So Michael was first, and we're still alive. Yeah, it must be all that Plamil. Second was Paul, and then Deb. Hi, Deb, and hi, Michael. And people are streaming in, as they say in the media, even if it's not true or not really. Don't forget, people, if you're going to tune in on anything other than my YouTube, then that's the best place to go if you want to be involved with the chat, the interactive chat that goes on during the show. We can see your Facebook comments, but you won't be able to see any replies to them, apart from the ones that we give you, as it were, on the screen. And speaking of on the screen, we have a policy of not making you pay super chats and all that kind of stuff in order to have your say as part of the program. So do comment away as you so wish. Right, Ronnie. So we've got three things on the agenda, I think. So we're going to talk about Brazilian cows, and then the Viva banned advert. And then we talk about these academics who are calling for, well, in support of the plant-based treaty, really, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting stuff that they're talking about, you know, they say some interesting things about the status and the reason for universities, which I found quite interesting. So we'll come back to that. This is the first issue, and so this is the Guardian. And so, Ronnie, you know quite a bit about this issue already. In fact, we've spoken about it already, haven't we? In the sense that
we've covered this before. Basically, we had an item on one of our previous news shows regarding the new president of Brazil, who was elected last year, a guy called Lula, and the previous president of Brazil, Bolsonaro, was like an extreme kind of neoliberal guy that just allowed anyone to do anything they wanted to make a profit, and that resulted in huge destruction of the Amazon by people wanting to do cattle ranching and to kind of use the Amazon for other purposes. And Lula promised that he'd reverse that, and indeed that seems to be happening. In the previous show, we mentioned how the deforestation of the Amazon, there'd been a really big reduction in that since Lula took office. And this is really a continuation of that, in that, you know, what happened under Bolsonaro's reign was these kind of land grabbers, you know, went into the Amazon and kind of, were destroying, huge tracts of the Amazon for cattle ranching. And that was allowed to happen under Bolsonaro. Well, Lula has vowed to put a stop to it, and action's been taken to do that, where where kind of forces have moved in and removed the cattle ranchers and removed the cows as well, so that's
that was a bit that interested me, because so this is giving a few more details about what we've spoken about, in the sense that, as you say, Lula is trying to do something about it. Can never get used to saying Lula, but it sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? But trying to do something about it, but the actual operation to kind of clear the illegal farmers is really difficult, and is involving almost like it's like an armed struggle, isn't it, Ronnie?
It's like, yeah, it's because these, they've kind of, you're talking almost, I suppose, like a kind of mafia with these cattle ranchers. They're armed, and I suppose they're organised, and they've been allowed to proliferate, and so they're going to put up resistance to something like this. So it's not easy for the authorities to remove them, but and to take them on. But they have, vowed to take them on, and that's what they're doing. And with the aim that the where the Amazon's been destroyed, it will grow back. I think that's the aim of what they're doing, and also to prevent any further incursions into the Amazon for cattle ranching or other reasons.
Yeah, and I mean the subtitle here, task force. I mean, they've formed, in fact, two different forces. It looks like task force deployed to remove thousands of cows owned by land grabbers from indigenous territory. And I'll just read out the first thing. Brazilian government has launched its biggest ever operation to remove thousands of cows owned by illegal land grabbers from indigenous territory in the Amazon rainforest. So obviously, from our point of view, the kind of animal liberation question is, to what extent are the individual other animals part of this? What's going on with them? And I suppose, to cut to the chase, they're really being used as kind of pawns in this war, really, aren't they?
Well, it kind of makes no difference to them, because it does say towards the end of the article that the cows are going to go to slaughter and be, and the meat's going to be used as part of a program to feed poorer people. I think it says that at the end of the article.
Yeah, I'll just zap down to that so we can highlight it.
So really, as far as the cows are concerned, it kind of makes no difference. Nothing has changed as far as they're concerned.
No.
they're still being sent off for slaughter. They're not being removed from these Amazon and taken to some big sanctuary somewhere to live out the rest of their lives. They're going to slaughter, just as they would have done anyway. Had the cattle ranching in the Amazon continued. And
I wonder if the sanctuary thing would have been a possibility at all. I wonder.
Well, the problem is numbers, isn't it? The problem is numbers.
Yeah.
How would that huge number of cows be accommodated on a sanctuary? And it's
very, very, very difficult, isn't it? Because
very, very difficult. So of course, but you see, the beneficiaries of it really are, the free living beings, the animals, that live, in the Amazon. That if the Amazon kind of expands through this land, becoming reforested, then that's more territory, for those animals that inhabit the Amazon. So it's, they're really the ones that have gained from this. And I suppose the indigenous peoples that live in the Amazon as well will have gained from this. They're the ones that have gained. The cows, have neither gained nor lost, and really, in a sense, because the same is happening to them as would anyway, which is they go.
So it's the kind of indigenous Brazilian tribes, traditional lands that have been used by these gangs.
Yeah.
And it says here, executed by a gang that had great political power, because, as you said, Bolsonaro was kind of almost like taking away all the restrictions that was regulating what they were doing. I mean, but they even got support of some churches and stuff. So, the actual reversal of this is quite a complicated kind of.
Oh yes, it's something that's been allowed to go on for a long time, and so reversing it isn't an easy thing. Especially as the government of Brazil is up against some very powerful forces, that want to maintain the current situation. As I said, there's you've got kind of religious bodies involved in this.
Yeah, well, here's a mention of that, because the picture is they tried to this is the gangs. They tried to burn down one of the bridges in order to slow down the operation by the government kind of agency or task force. But also it says amongst their most avid supporters is Senator, and I won't try and, it's Marino, who is a Bolsonaro ally and pastor of the Evangelical Church Assembly of God, who sent a letter last year to the government describing environmental agents as bandits and scoundrels. So, you know,
well, I think there's a strong thread running through religion about there's a strong kind of human supremacist thread that runs through religion, which is like, you know, that humans are more important than all other animals, and that, you know, they're more important than nature, that the human species is here to have mastery over nature, you see, and over all other animals. And so that would kind of feed into this, wouldn't it? That it doesn't matter that the Amazon's destroyed, because, you know, as the wonderful humans, we're entitled to do that as a sort of master species. And this is the kind of
this is their interpretation of an idea like dominion or something.
You know, like kind of I give you dominion over the earth. Isn't that what God is supposed to have said, or something?
Something like that. I wasn't there at the time.
Something like that. I mean, that it's really. I always think it's really convenient that humans have invented an imaginary figure in the sky to justify their oppression of other animals. You know,
and the oppression of each other, of course.
Oppression of each other, and indeed the oppression.
We go to this bit here, which is highlighted because that clicks. So there's some pretty dramatic pictures here. So this is part of the operation to damage and destroy the gang's stuff. It doesn't seem particularly environmentally friendly.
It doesn't seem. There's a fair amount of carbon being put into the atmosphere. There isn't there through those fires. You thought there might have been another way of, you know, destroying that without doing that.
I mean, basically, they've got to go in kind of mob-handed, scare the ranchers and whoever else away, and then destroy their equipment, which the ranchers have tried to hide and camouflage and this kind of stuff.
Yes,
you know, a dramatic picture here of they're sneaking up on a building. If you can see that big arm, then if you see the top one, that's that one that's been burnt. So
yes. That's the one. Yeah.
A lot of pollution there, though, Ronnie.
Yeah, there is. Yes, and I'm quite sure that wouldn't have needed to be. That wouldn't have needed to have happened. To be quite honest, I think these things could have been like removed and taken away rather than doing that. But
I'm not sure about that though, because I mean, it says here the agents have to be careful to avoid revenge attacks. So
I suppose if they were
to disable equipment, then that could be repaired. So they have to destroy it, not disable it.
It's a complicated. I suppose they're weighing up. Okay, so, you know, there's an environmental negative there, but, you know, weighed up against the, you know, what they see as a huge positive of removing the cows from that land. But I think there's a kind of deeper issue here, is that to what extent has this, you know, has this kind of saved forests in general? Okay, so as far as the Amazon is concerned, those cows have been removed from that land. That can then regenerate. It can go back to forest, and the Amazon will reclaim that land and, you know, become larger, and that's great for the animals that live in the Amazon. That's right. But if nothing is done regarding the consumption of animal products, and regarding, you know, the consumption that comes from cows, for instance, then some land somewhere is going to be needed to feed those cows to provide that demand. And okay, that's not going to be that part of the Amazon where the cows have been taken away, but it's going to be somewhere else, isn't it? It's going to be somewhere else, either in terms of cows grazing on that land and thereby preventing that land from returning to forest, or it will be cows kept in some intensive feedlot, or like zero grazing or something, where crops have to be grown on land to feed those cows, and that if that land wasn't used to grow those crops, that land in turn could go back to forest. So forest is being destroyed anyway. It might not be that part of the Amazon, but you see, this is kind of a kind of attack on supply, isn't it? It's like these particular suppliers of like meat that comes from cows, and they've been put out of business, and the cows have been removed. But as long as the demand carries on, that demand will be supplied from somewhere else, and because that demand.
Are you saying this is the ultimate pressure campaign, Ronnie?
What I'm saying is, what I'm saying is that it's moving things around, which is what often pressure campaigns do, isn't it? They move the problem around from one place to another, and this is what this is doing, because if there's no effect on the demand for animal products, and specifically here from for meat and other products that come from cows, right? That's going to be supplied from elsewhere, and those cows are going to need land to sustain them, and that land is going to be land that is taken from forests. If that land wasn't used to to feed those cows, then that land could go back to the forest, in the same way that this land that's been cleared of the cows is now going to go back to forest, if you see what I mean. So some forest somewhere is going to get it. All right, the Amazon, that's great, for that part of the Amazon, for the animals that live in the Amazon, and for the indigenous people that live in the Amazon, that's great for them. But somewhere else in the world, either in Brazil or somewhere else in the world, another area of forest is going to get it instead, either by being destroyed or through that land not being able to go back to forest, which we urgently need in order to combat the climate crisis. So it can be seen as just moving a problem around, really.
Well, that's always the case, isn't it? Let me just help Linda out here. I can't find this episode on YouTube, so if you go to Roger Yates' YouTube channel, then you might get a tab saying live. It'll probably be there. What it is, it's not a recording yet, because we're actually transmitting to YouTube live. So you probably need to go to the live tab in order to see it. And then it's just a question of opening it. And I've put the link up to my channel down here. You've got two, one by me and one by the Vegan Review, because it goes to the Vegan Review Facebook page as well. Okay, so that hopefully that will help Linda out. And then this interesting bit here, a war of sorts is underway between two visions of the Amazon. On the one side is a coalition of global markets, the military and local politicians, miners and ranchers, who see the forest as a resource to be exploited for the greatest profit possible. But I mean, if you think about that, I mean, there's a heck of a lot of powerful people involved there, so it's not going to be that easy to curtail all this, right?
No, it's not going to be that easy, but at least some effort's being made, and had Bolsonaro still been running the show, there'd been no chance, and the situation would have just got worse and worse. So at least some effort is being made to kind of curtail the activities of these characters.
And then finally, it says, on the other hand, is a coalition of traditional forest communities, environmentalists and scientists, who warn that the forest, which is one of the world's most important climate regulators, is degrading close to the point of no return as a result of forest clearance and river contamination. And so basically then just saying that it's been a bit of a political football, really, that's been bounced around all over the place.
Yes.
The way it happens, really, these things, isn't it?
Yeah, and you'd hope, and obviously, we're going to be on the side of the the environmentalists and the indigenous people, and all these people that kind of.
No, I'm on the side of the capitalists, Ronnie.
Well, you're not making a lot of money out of this show for your capitalist desires, are you?
That is true. That is true. Yeah.
But you see, yeah, we're on their side. But I'd ask the question: how many of them are vegan, or how many of them at least consume a vegan-friendly diets? Because if they don't, they're saying, oh yeah, we don't want cattle ranching here on this part of the Amazon. We want to preserve it. We want the forests to come back and all that. But I'm gonna destroy some forest somewhere else through my eating habits. And once again, there's there was no mention of the other animals there. There's mention about the environment in that paragraph, wasn't there? But the Amazon's home to countless numbers of other animals, isn't it? That's their home that's being destroyed. Isn't that there's nobody there? There is somebody there, and I don't just mean the indigenous people. I mean, all the persons that live in the forest, all the various, other animal persons that inhabit that area as well. That's the number one problem, isn't it? It's their territory, it's their homeland that's been destroyed.
Right, you've frozen a bit there, Ronnie. I don't know if I froze for you, did I?
No, you didn't. It's me. I think my process is working a bit over time. I don't know whether I'm kind of jumping about a little bit.
Best to close down your tabs if you can. Yeah,
let's just see. I don't know whether I can do something with. If I go into my settings, is that going to disrupt anything, or will I still remain?
No, you should be okay. It's just that I'm not quite sure if it would make much of a difference. It's more to do with just helping your computer by getting it to do less work, essentially. So not having much open besides StreamYard really is the key.
There we are. I've done a couple of things on. I had myself on high definition and touching up my appearance. So that might have added to the process.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
It hasn't made a lot of difference. I think my appearance might be beyond touching up, to be honest.
Yeah, well, the less we can see might be better, really. To be honest.
I seem to be moving around a bit now, so perhaps that's what solved the problem. It was too much for the computer to touch me up.
Right. So, let's move on to Viva then. So now we've actually got the advert to show. There is a slight content warning on it because there's a little bit. Well, there's one very brief slaughterhouse scene, but and there's a couple of not so great bits. But I mean, it's not the worst thing you'll have ever seen. But we could bring up the newspaper first if you want, Ronnie, or do you want to actually show the film?
Well, show the film first so people kind of know what it's all about.
What the hell are we talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So as I said, slight content warning, but there's nothing much. So this is the advert that's been banned and seems to have got Viva quite a lot of publicity.
New from Killer Yogurts. The umbilical cord flavour. Produced with only the finest ingredients. The stolen milk of grieving mothers. Taste the torment in every mouthful. Blended with brutality. Be complicit. With Killer Yogurts. It's a killer. These Muller cows have never grazed a blade of grass. All mothers have their newborn babies stolen. Baby calves are denied their mother's love. Mother cows are killed when their milk production falls. Many newborn babies are slaughtered.
So that's the latest one, and that one got banned. And you were saying that their earlier one, which is only less than a minute, I think. I'll show you that one. This one didn't get banned. This one here.
Yeah, the earlier one.
Vegan?
The one they.
I want meat.
Just meat?
Sounds good.
Pulled pork.
I'm so hungry. I could eat a horse. Just Meat delivered fresh to your door with a free gift for our new customers.
Try going vegan today.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that try going vegan bit at the end.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. I don't like that, but I think that's actually a better advert. I think, the one that didn't get banned.
And
I
you
think
reckon it's being shown at the moment?
Yeah, it's been
Channel
shown
4?
again. Yeah, it was shown last year, and it's currently, I think it's been shown on Channel 4 and a few other channels on the TV. I think at this moment, I think it's probably running till about the middle of the month, something like that.
Yeah.
But what they've done, you see, I'm just wondering with the Muller advert whether they kind of, they must have had some idea that would be banned, but they probably thought, well, it's a win-win, because either it gets aired, or if it's banned, then they'll get loads of publicity, which is kind of what's actually happened. They've got lots of publicity through the advert being banned. I mean, I think it's been in pretty much all the newspapers about it being banned, and even some of the online articles have actually shown the advert. I know the Daily Mail, the online version of the Daily Mail actually showed the advert in the article. I mean, how much difference that's going to make to Daily Mail readers, I don't know, but it actually was. They included it in their article.
Yeah. So Deb's saying, so some of these ads are actually on mainstream TV. So the answer to that is yes, depending on.
They kind of are. I mean, Channel 4 probably isn't the most watched channel, but it's one of the. Yeah, it's one of the main ones, isn't it? Really.
Oh yeah, it's an established mainstream.
Mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, the history of adverts has been difficult because it's so easy to end up with an 18 certificate, or used to be an X-rated certificate. And some of the very early ones, in fact, there was even one which featured Spike Milligan and Joanna Lumley, and all they were doing was talking, and on behalf of Compassionate World Farming, which is not exactly the most radical group in the world, but that got banned. And so what tended to happen back in that day is that they would then be transferred to cinema, so they'd be on cinema adverts. But then they would have either a AA certificate or an X, which means 15 or 18. And so it meant by default, your audience was down from millions on the TV to, a few thousand in cinemas, that kind of
that's
thing.
right. I remember the adverts. I think it was Lynx, the anti-fur group. They had an advert at the cinema, didn't they?
Yeah, the famous one, David Bailey one. Yeah, that's right.
Is that the one where someone was pulling a fur coat along and blood came out of it? Is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one.
I saw that. I was in the cinema and it came on, that one, actually. I wasn't expecting it. Right. Yeah.
And you were cheering them, were you? Yeah.
Well, I was pleased that it was being shown, at the cinema, that people were being made aware. Yeah.
They had to change the ending, though, because the ending was a bit controversial, because at the end it said it takes over 60 dumb animals to make a fur coat, but only one to wear it. And of course, that didn't go down too well in the activist community.
No, I can kind of understand. I can understand that.
Yeah, the notion of dumb animals. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so let's make our way through this. There's one bit that. Well, first of all, it said the watchdog found it being graphic and gory. So the thing is that there were those. Going back to your point about did they expect it to be banned and then relying on getting the publicity because of that, because you would imagine that you're pushing it to try and get those slaughterhouse scenes through.
Yeah, I kind of think I think so, and even the kind of even the beginning bit of the blood coming out of the woman's mouth and all that, I think that might have been a bit, a bit touch and go whether that would be allowed.
Yeah, I suppose it's an interesting play on words, though, isn't it? Killer and Muller.
And Muller, yes. It's part of a whole campaign. There's a whole campaign surrounding it. They've got leaflets. They've been doing, kind of days of action in lots of major cities in connection with it, where they've had like vegan yogurt sampling. They've been inviting people up to sample vegan yogurts. So they've had a kind of tent where people have gone in and, you know, watched a video. A lot of it is around the kind of zero grazing, because this is something that Muller, you know, where, you know, Muller used to get their dairy products, where the cows are kept indoors in intensive conditions. And of course, I think one problem with that ad is that it kind of, people could think that was only Muller that did that, and that it was only cows that were used by Muller that had the calves taken away and all that. And whereas it's the dairy industry as a whole.
Yeah, well, we're not going to be too surprised by that, though, in the sense that I mean, I tell you what, how do you fancy doing a bit of a watch along, which we can stop now and again, and let's play the first bit of the Piers Morgan thing, because as you were saying, it created a lot of response, not least Piers Morgan, who never gives up an opportunity to have a go at vegans, of course. So let's do that, and there's a couple of bits we want to stop and just have a little chat. So let's do that.
Piers Morgan Uncensored. We all know Muller yogurts, these creamy treats with crunchy or fruity bits in your corner.
The sound dips here, but then it comes back.
Apparently, all yogurts are evil. They're murderous. A vegan charity has released an ad about them that will give you nightmares. A warning, you might find this disturbing.
New from Killer Yogurts. The umbilical cord flavour. Produced with only the finest ingredients. The stolen milk of grieving mothers. Taste the torment in every mouthful. Blended with brutality. Be complicit. With Killer Yogurts.
Well, I'm joined now by the director of the charity, Viva, who made the ad, Juliet Galately. Well, Juliet, I've got to be honest, that's one of the most disgusting things I think I've ever had to watch. It's also one of the most disingenuous. It's a yoghurt, for goodness sake. Why are you making ads like that about a yoghurt?
I'm sorry, I don't believe that's the most disgusting thing in your editorial career that you've
Pretty much
seen.
one of them,
No,
I've got to be honest.
I'm sorry, it's a pantomime style. It's obviously a parody. It's obviously fake blood. You know, over 3 million people saw it.
But what's your point?
The point is, we went into and investigated dairy farming and blew apart the notion that these animals are in idyll. One in 5 of the animals, and supplying people like that, were zero graze. This means they never saw a blade of grass. And I went in myself to check this out, and they're in filthy conditions. The male calves taken away and shot or knifed in the throat because they don't produce milk.
So that's how it opens, and
Yes. Yeah,
Piers Morgan's got his little yogurt pot.
Oh yeah, he's probably going to eat some of it, but like
because he does that every time.
But I mean, there's a couple of things here. I mean, like first of all, it kind of, I wonder why he is so obsessed with vegans and where that comes from. You know, what is it in Piers Morgan that
maybe there's some vegan paying him to be like this because he's so unpopular that it might make veganism popular.
It could be, but it's almost like you know, the people that kind of you know, the ones on online, you know, that kind of say bacon in response to sort of vegan posts and that. You think, well, why have you bothered to do that? Is that a sense of guilt? You didn't have to say anything. If you're not interested in being vegan, just don't, you know, why are you on this page? You know, what's going on, you see? And I just wonder with Piers Morgan, what really is the motivation for him doing this? Is he kind of, has he got a guilt complex about not being vegan? What
he says, the official line, what he says, Ronnie, is that he wants to expose the hypocrisy of vegans. That's what he says. That's his official line. In fact, he says that a little bit later in this. And so he's basically saying, well, look, you know, I'm a meat eater and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I'm consistently kind of bad, if you like. But you vegans, and of course he always talks about almonds and avocados, which he does in a second. But there's another issue first.
Yeah.
So that's how it starts. Now, the troubling kind of welfare-y kind of bits now really is that the kind of line within the campaign is that the cows have never grazed on a blade of grass.
Yes.
Now that is mentioned a few times. Then
Yeah.
you talked about filthy conditions, and also you'll see that the focus is entirely on factory farming.
Yes.
So again, you've got the usual kind of welfare elements built into these kind of campaigns. But, that's kind of standard, isn't it? Really.
Well, it's standard. Of course, the problem is if people think, well, okay, I won't buy anything from Muller, and if I don't
get another brand,
it'll be all right because these other people, they're the cows that are in the fields, you see, and because she hasn't tackled the kind of the fundamental problem with dairy farming, and indeed the fundamental problem with the oppression and exploitation of all other animals, because that's not been tackled.
Content warning: if you're expecting anybody to be talking about animal rights or animal liberation, then it's not going to happen.
No,
and that's
you see, I think that's the problem that people find. Because people don't want to change. That human beings are like kind of highly resistant to change, and so if people can find an excuse of like carrying on pretty much in the same way they've always done, then they kind of will. And so you've got to cut off all avenues for them to be able to do that. And so if you're just focused on these zero grazed, intensively kept cows, and that's the focus of your campaign, what the danger is that people are going to just say, all right, well, I kind of I won't buy milk that comes from that, and I'll try and make sure that the milk I buy doesn't come from those cows, and I'll carry on the same as always. That unless you kind of go to the root of the problem, that's the real danger of doing a campaign like that.
Yeah, I'd say so. Michael said the welfareist message is always a problem, but some do go beyond this. You mean groups or kind of people hearing the welfare message, and both would be true. It's a question of whether you need the welfare bit put in there in the first place. A lot of people, want to start with cruelty and abuse and everything.
What I'd say,
they very rarely get on to the fundamentals, as you were saying.
Yeah,
the fundamental is often missing because the conversation's moved on by the time you get to it.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say though, in relation to this advert and the publicity it's got, I mean, the adverts, had a great big airing through appearing on the Piers Morgan show, hasn't it? Yeah. Just with this, both of the advert and the campaign. If the question's going to be asked, has that or will that result in people going vegan? Then the answer to that is yes. I think it will cause some people to go vegan, despite it not being something that would be ideal in our eyes.
Would you say, Ronnie, that in terms of if you were in Juliet's position, you'd actually say the solution is to go vegan, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would, and I wouldn't. I wouldn't be talking about cows. I wouldn't have talked about the zero grazing. I'd talk about the dairy industry as a whole. I'd say, in the dairy industry as a whole, the whole thing is based on calves being taken away from their mothers. It couldn't exist without that. It's completely based on that. The male calves being slaughtered.
It's oppression and rights violations. That's right.
Yes, that is the dairy industry as a whole. It's the dairy industry as a whole that's the problem. And that's what I do. I wouldn't have gone into the, that it's this, focusing on the zero grazing. Yeah, it could be mentioned that there's a percentage of the cows that are kept in those conditions. Yeah, I mean, that could be said. But you've got to say that the whole of the industry is wrong. You've got to
Well,
tackle
she also said one in 5 cows.
Yeah, one in
never.
5. So people think, well, the chances are that my milk comes
Yeah,
from a
that's
4 out of 5.
well,
You know.
my supplier would be one of the other 4. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Or I get my meat from, my dairy from the little farm down the road.
Yeah. So sneaky as ever. I mean, Morgan is interesting here because he's already said that he finds this advert campaign disingenuous, but then he's totally disingenuous because the problem with him is he won't let you develop an argument, which is why if anybody in the chat ever ends up on the Piers Morgan show, people go for the fundamental message first, because he won't let you build up to it. He just won't, And so this is what he does next, which is just kind of laughable, really.
The mothers, when their milk production went down, killed. So there's a lot of death in the dairy.
Let me ask you this. What do you think happens in the wild? How do you think animals eat?
What species are you talking
about?
Well,
you're very concerned about the protection of animals, but if you go to the African bush, animals eat each other all day long in the most savage, primeval way. Why aren't you campaigning about that?
Yeah,
why don't you go and protect animals from other animals?
Yeah, listen, my degree is zoology. I know quite a lot about animals, and
so
they are not. And they are
on my
not,
TikTok feed, all I see all day are lions destroying gazelles'
Come
heads.
on, they're not. Which is a bit more gory than that. They're not.
It's real life.
Farmed. They're not factory farmed. These animals never see sunlight. They never graze a blade of grass. It's obscene. I don't think even you would agree with that.
Well, my problem with vegans is this.
Right, so he moves on to the almonds and the avocados now.
But, I think she, I'd handle that in a completely different way. I'd have said, well, but that's not the responsibility of humans. What we're talking about is our moral responsibilities as humans. What we're responsible for, we're not responsible for what other animals do to other animals, but we're responsible for what we do to other animals,
and not least lions. I mean, lions again. I mean, obligate carnivores.
Yeah, that's right. I said we're talking about our moral responsibility of human beings. That's not. If animals kill other animals in the wild, that's not our responsibility. They're doing that to survive. And so all that stuff about I'm a zoologist and all that was kind of not really addressing the point in the best way. I thought.
No, but I mean, I think it shut him up a little bit about. Well, I'm a bit of an animal expert, so watch it, kind of thing. So I think
that maybe that did, but you see, it's once again, it's kind of not tackling the very simple fundamentals of why it's wrong to oppress and exploit other animals, and in particular why it's wrong to oppress and exploit other animals for food. Yeah. This is really a very simple and clear moral issue. It's not complicated.
No, I think what I would say, right, is that we've lost the ability in the movement, especially since people like Franciona's kind of left it, to make the case for animal rights. Tom Reagan is dead now, and so because animal rights is actually about human behavior. It's about what we do. Yeah. And I mean, I think at the end of the animals film, it's not about them, it's about us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know a lot of activists don't like that. They kind of look at it's the animals movement. Well, it's not. It's our movement, because we're human beings running a social movement. But also the theory of animal rights is about what humans do. Right. And the fact that we are moral agents. Lions are not moral agents. Full stop.
No. Because humans have the ability to choose, or those of us humans that do have the ability to choose, which is the vast majority of adult humans. If you have an ability to choose, you're morally obliged to make the most ethical choice, or at least to at least try to do that, aren't you? In these situations, because we've got the ability to choose, whether to eat in a way which cause mass slaughtering and suffering to other animals, or to eat in a way that doesn't do that. And so therefore we're morally obliged to eat in a way that doesn't do that. that's the end of argument, isn't it?
Yeah.
No.
And, you know, to try and make an analogy between moral patients and moral agents, I mean, that was the key thing here, because, I mean, you know, lions and human beings, morally in this sense, are different. They're obligate carnivores, we're not.
Yeah. Yes.
All the evidence is that we're either omnivores, or there's a big evidence that we're near herbivores mainly, right?
We don't have to kill. We don't have to kill other animals in order and eat other animals in order to survive, and so we shouldn't. End of argument. We shouldn't do it. We don't have to. Why are we doing it? You know, we're moral. You know, we there is no moral justification for doing it if we're able to survive perfectly well, which we can without doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to the last bit then. The last bit is usual. Almonds and avocados. Now, actually, I think Juliet dealt with this rather better than Joey Carbstrong did a few weeks ago. Joey got a little bit kind of caught out really with this thing, because he tried to go through all the stats about you know what factors lead to the deaths of bees, etc., etc. And so let's see this bit, because there's something I want to say about this one in particular.
I mean, I bet you probably like almonds, do you?
Oh no, you're not going to do the almond avocado with me. No,
Just
this is
asking
boring.
you, do
no,
you
this,
eat?
This is boring.
It
no.
may be boring.
No.
I actually find the vegan assault on meat eaters boring. So, do you eat avocados and almonds?
I'm not assaulting.
Do you eat them?
Anybody?
Do you eat them?
I eat them from Spain.
So you do. You eat avocados
From Spain,
and almonds.
because the issues that you talk
and
about.
do you drink?
About the
what kind of milk do
bees,
you drink?
You're talking about the murder.
What kind of milk do you drink?
You talk about the murder soya.
Soya. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
you talk about the murder of bees in other interviews.
yes, because vegans
but you
don't care.
But you don't care about the billions of calves and chicks and piglets. That
I
are killed.
understand.
So you're a complete hypocrite.
No, I'm not.
You are, Piers.
No, the hypocrites are the vegans who
they're
munch
not.
away on almonds and their avocados and
No.
stuff. They don't give a damn about billions of bees getting annihilated,
that's
because the
absolute
bees are the
rubbish.
little guys. And I had this
rubbish.
conversation each time, because that's the hypocrisy. I don't care.
You're obsessed with this because you think it catches
I am
vegans
a
out.
proud
Listen,
and happy meat
Piers,
and yogurt
Piers,
eater.
we're in the
But when you
sixth-
try and make out this yogurt is the most evil thing that anyone can eat in
Piers.
the world,
Now it goes on to we'll probably do a fourth one, but this bit raises loads of issues. I mean,
I think fundamentally, if you compare the kind of animal product alternatives to almonds and avocados, the harm that those products cause to to the whole of the natural world is massively greater than almonds and avocados. I mean, if you take almond milk, I mean, compared with other plant milks, it's not the most eco-friendly plant milk, for various reasons, but nevertheless, it's massively more eco-friendly than dairy milk. It's hugely more eco-friendly than dairy milk. So if you had a choice between only drinking almond milk and drinking dairy milk,
but we don't just have that choice, though, do we?
We don't just have that choice. But all these products and avocados, I suppose they're kind of what would they be? A kind of protein source, I suppose, and a source of various nutrients. Yeah, there may be some problems with
a fat source.
Fat as well, yeah. There may be some. They may not be the most environmentally friendly vegetable product that you could eat, but they're massively more eco-friendly than any animal products.
Yeah. Well, on the Spain thing, she was trying to say, well, look, I get them from Spain, and that gets around all the problems that you normally say about them. But he never allowed it to say that. I think it was probably wrong for her to call him a hypocrite, because I don't think he is. And Deb, no, he's not a bee lover. He says he doesn't care about anyone.
No, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake to get involved in like a personal argument with somebody like that. I think that kind of isn't a good way to go. I think it's better to kind of to talk about the issue, rather than to to have it, to say anything.
Yeah, well,
personal
he
to somebody
comes
like that.
back. He comes back to the Spanish point. He tries the milk thing. Now it's interesting because eventually he tries it twice. What milk do you think? And she said soya, and that's it. That's the end of his. That's the end of his argument then, because he wants her to say almonds, and she didn't. Right now, and then it goes. Then he goes on to transport, as we'll see in a minute. Now, the one thing I don't understand is why somebody from the movement just doesn't tell this guy what we know from the research. What we know from the research, and this is the journals, the trade journals, is that the people who buy almond milk are health, fitness people. That's the market for almond milk. And when there's been surveys, and I've seen at least 2 surveys of vegans, almond milk is always at the bottom for the reason that you gave, Ronnie, which is it's not very environmentally friendly. Oat milk is always at the top, and soya milk is usually second. And the third point is that vegans have got a track record in boycotting problematic products, and so therefore, if these things are going to be problematic, then we're going to be the first ones to boycott them. And I think there might be a case for people to say, well, until we can find out the ins and outs of this bee situation, instead of just the claim counterclaim kind of thing, then vegans ought to boycott the stuff, because that just gets around all the
I mean,
problems.
we don't have to eat almond milk. The thing is that there's a case for really doing our best to just consume stuff that's kind of grown as near to where we live as possible. That isn't always possible to do, but there is an argument for that. In terms of,
I was wondering. It's a question. I was wondering why nobody so far has said that to him and said, look, within the vegan community, almond milk is not very popular, and so we don't have to defend it. It's not even consumed very much by vegans. Now, I was wondering about the reluctance to say that might go down to this kind of modern thing. Kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that because even vegans in the modern music movement seem to think that there should be a vegan version of everything, that maybe it's seen as bad to actually say, oh, we can't have that, or we won't have that.
I think people think that you're kind of sort of limiting things. In other words, like, we've already given up a load of stuff. There's already a load of food that we don't consume, and it's almost like, well, there's already a load of food I don't consume, and now you're telling me there's this other food I can't consume.
But you say because we consume food on moral grounds. That's why.
Exactly. You see, and I think we do need to think about the food we consume, even if that food is comes from plants. It's not all just because food comes from plants doesn't mean that it's all ethically equal, if you see what I mean. And even within within the plant foods, we should still be doing our best to eat as ethically as possible, both in terms of how those products are produced and where they come from. For instance, if you're eating stuff that's been flown in an aeroplane, then you're
funny enough, that is Morgan's next point, because he tries to get Juliet to say that the avocados are flown in from Spain, and she said they come on a boat. So exactly who's kind of right and wrong about that, I'm not quite sure, but we can play that a little bit now.
I think you're bonkers,
Piers,
Juliet.
we're in the 6th mass extinction. We're living it now. You're behaving like a news anchor on Don't Look Up.
I'm in the what?
You're behaving like a news anchor on
What
the film
extinction?
Don't Look Up.
What
we're
extinction?
in the 6th mass extinction. You're deflecting all the time from
The
the
world
real
is not
issues.
going to end
you
because
are trying to deflect
because I eat
from
a
the
Muller
fact
yogurt. Look,
that animals are factory farmed. You're trying to deflect from the fact
the world's still
that
here.
veganism protects the environment.
Juliet, we're still here.
See, I mean, that is just childish, right? I mean, he's just like a teenager.
Childish, but you see, I kind of, I mean, her style of, speaking to him wouldn't be at all the way I'd approach it, to be quite honest. I mean, she's kind of got very het up, hasn't she, with him? And I don't
Well,
think
that's
that
the kind of thing that they want on these shows.
they want that, and I don't think that particularly helps. I think that the interesting thing about transportation is, though, in terms of food production and in terms of the effect on the climate, the method of production has a far greater impact on the climate than the method of transportation. In other words, a vegan-friendly product that is flown all the way from Australia actually causes less harm in terms of fueling the climate crisis than buying some beef from a farm down the road, or buying some chicken from a farm down the road, or buying some milk from a farm down the road, because it's the production that causes the greatest impact, not the transportation. And although, we should try to avoid, we should always be trying to do our best, to minimize our, our impact and the harm we do to other animals. We should always be looking to do that. And so it is better to avoid stuff being flown.
Yeah, well, what I say about transportation is that if you see the Home Project, which is a free thing on YouTube, I always say this: Home Project, home spelt in capital letters. And there's a scene there. It's a brilliant film, and the scene, it comes back from you can see a few containers, and it comes back and back and back. And it ends up being a massive ship full of these huge containers. I mean, we're talking about a huge thing. It's like a floating city. So the individual items in those containers, the actual cost of transporting them is going to be fairly minute. We're talking about, probably fractions of a penny or cent. Yeah,
it is. Yes, it is. Yes.
That's not to say that we shouldn't care, of course.
It doesn't mean that we shouldn't care. And obviously, like, for instance, we get vegetables in from an organic box scheme, and we do try and get stuff mostly that's grown in this country. But when stuff does come from abroad, it's shipped. It's not flown. They've got a policy of not flying anything. That's part of their kind of eco-friendly policy. So none of that. So if we were to get avocados from them, those avocados would not be flown because it's against their policy.
Well,
so maybe
again,
perhaps Juliet does that.
Let me ask that question that I asked before in a different way then. Do you think that a lot of people wouldn't want to make the point you've just made, because the next thing he's going to say is, do you fly for holidays? And the vegan activists in particular, and the influencers, they fly all over the place all the time, and they're not going to want to say that there's a moral problem with that, are they?
Well, I think the only way to justify that was if they kind of thought that okay, I'm causing harm to the environment and to other animals that live in that environment through flying, but the good I'm doing through my flying kind of counteracts that. I mean, it's the same sort of thing I've spoken about with kind of driving somewhere to do a stall promoting veganism. Going there in a vehicle is having a negative impact, isn't it? On the environment. But by educating people to become vegan, that has a huge positive effect. And so when you weigh them up, it's a utilitarian calculation, isn't it? Well, they could maybe make the same with regard to flying and said, all right, I flew, to the USA, or I flew halfway around the world. But when I got there, I did so much good work in promoting veganism that outweighed.
Well, I've done that myself. I've gone on flights to speak at VegFest, all over Britain, so.
That's the argument that could be made. But I think if there is an alternative to flying, I mean, perhaps in a sense, if there's an alternative to kind of any kind of traveling, we should kind of look into whether we can do it. Especially now with the proliferation of kind of online conferencing, that's kind of really come about, through the lockdown. The amount of people that use Zoom now, the amount of people that use StreamYard that we're on now, for instance, to hold conferences, to hold meetings.
Well, there's still a lot of people who do half their week at home from work, don't they?
Exactly. And so that massively reduces, our impact on the environment, because we're not having to travel. And so, I think all the time, all these kind of conferences are held and stuff like that, all the time, I think we should be thinking, can this be done? Can this be done online? Can this be done online so we don't have the impact on the environment for doing it? I mean, I think there are some things where you need to go in person. I'm not kind of, you get a situation where people might have family abroad or something like that. And it's, I appreciate it's not the same speaking to them on a computer is actually seeing them in person. There are instances like that, but I think very often, this idea, is my journey really necessary? That kind of question, to ask. And I think particularly with meetings, I think often it's not, and those could be held online.
Yeah, well, I mean, all I would say about that really as a sociologist is that because we're social animals, it's not quite the same, but it's good enough, I think. And so it's kind of like a compromise that you need to make.
I think in terms of if you're having some kind of more businessy meeting, the social side of that isn't so important, is it? So it's not like you're going out for a meal with somebody. It's not similar to that. It's a business thing, and so I think that often those things could be done on, and I think they are more now. After the lockdown and what people got used to. But I think you'd have to do that. That calculation is does the good idea outweigh the? And I think if you're just flying halfway around the world, like go to say somewhere like the vegan camp out, and you're just going there to just kind of eat a load of food and sit around with a load of vegans, and you're not really going to kind of doing anything to promote activism or to be to learn about activism, then I think there's a serious question over whether that's justifiable. No.
There's some interesting things in the comments, actually. Zem is saying we've got a structural problem with transportation, which is true. London to Amsterdam, flying is 1/3 the price of getting a train, for example.
Yeah. I'd agree, and I think
and that's not quicker than a coach or something like that.
I think that is something that needs to be addressed, and I think this is where, and it's to do with the privatization of the railways. So they're operating for a profit, and all the time they're putting the rail fares are due to go up again over here in the UK. They go up every year. I think there's a case for it being free. Tax the rich and have free transport on the railways, and then that would get people out of their cars.
That would be good. And here's something which is relevant to my position, because I'm rights-based, and so I talk about rights violations a lot. But I do have seen this problem here, that because it's not a deliberate rights violation, there's no issue. And Justin goes on to say that some people use that to talk about crop deaths, whereas I think the vegan position is that crop deaths are problematic, and that we should, as soon as we get some power, try and do something about it.
I think the question to ask is like, if you have a vegan that has this position that crop deaths are nothing to do with veganism, flying in an airplane when it's not necessary is nothing to do with veganism, eating almonds instead of something else is nothing to do with veganism. If people kind of take that position, then what I'd ask them is like, why are you a vegan? Why do you abstain from consuming animal products? What's your motivation for that? And if they say, which they kind of would say if they were like a genuine vegan, it's because I'm concerned about animals, or I'm concerned about other animals, and how they're exploited and how they're oppressed. And I'd say, well, yeah, but how is that kind of different from the animals that are oppressed through the environment being damaged or destroyed through human activity? How is that? How is that actually different?
Would you answer yes to this question, Ronnie? Should we give up on flying? I mean, obviously, the Andrew Lindsay thing about there's no pure land comes into thing. In other words,
should we give up on flying? I think we should seriously consider. I think we shouldn't fly unless it's kind of absolutely necessary. That's what I'd say. But you see, you've kind of got the. I mean, you've got the impact of flying on the environment. You know, it's a big contributor, quite a big contributor to the climate crisis. Although it's not, in actual fact, the fishing industry is a greater contributor to the climate crisis than all of flying, because of the damage that the trawling and stuff does to vegetation in the ocean. Prevents that vegetation from drawing the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. See,
then you're into the dead zone problem and all that.
Yeah. You see, so that that's kind of one of the things that needs to be borne in mind when talking about flying. But you see, the same argument would go for driving a car. You're driving a car along, and you're creating carbon's going into the atmosphere. You're creating greenhouse gases, and there's always a risk that you're going to run over another animal. In a car. So and we have. I mean, millions of just looking at birds. I think there's a figure of like 30 million birds are killed on British roads every year by vehicles, and
Yeah. Well, I always tell that story that we were dashing around the countryside on a Saab once, and we killed a squirrel because we were in such a rush. So that was devastating.
Yeah. That's like,
and I also went to Cumbria once to do something about a fish farm. We ended up not getting anywhere near the fish farm because they had kind of guard geese, and it was impossible to get anywhere close to the farm because these geese would kick off. But we killed a owl. On the way back.
This is the thing. If you're, so we kind of need to minimize our reliance on motor vehicles, but it's kind of in a sense it's a systemic problem, isn't it? Because our lives are such that so many people kind of rely on their car because public transport is so poor.
Yeah, and also in terms of the convenience of going shopping in a car compared with a bus and all the rest of it, and the fact that you're going to get people, maybe dodgy people on a bus that you're not going to get in your car, that kind of stuff. So
there's all sorts of reasons, and I think that kind of requires requires like more of a systemic change. We need a complete audit of our transportation system to make it as kind of as less harmful to other animals as possible, through various means. But the thing is, we're only going to get that when we're in charge. The present lot aren't going to do that. They don't give a shit about animals being killed on the roads. We're only going to get that when vegans run the show. And so once again, it comes back to vegan education, doesn't it? All these things really come back to vegan education.
Yes, indeed. Right, so let's just play a couple more minutes of this, and then we can get rid of it.
We are, but how
Nobody's
much longer
extinct.
have we got? You've got kids. You must care about the climate crisis.
I let my kids eat meat. I let them eat yogurt. And you know what? I don't think it's evil.
You must care about the climate crisis, and you must be aware that the University of Oxford has specifically stated that a vegan diet, it protects the environment.
But you just said you eat almonds or avocados from Spain. Which one?
From Spain.
Which one? Both.
I don't eat almonds, actually.
How do they get here?
Avocados.
How do they get here?
Boat.
Really? You sure?
Yes, I am sure.
You sure?
I am absolutely sure.
Really? And how do you think most vegans get most of their almonds, avocados from California?
And how do you think most
No, they don't.
You see, that's again the second time when it could be said that most vegans don't eat this bloody type of milk. You see,
I I mean, I'd have said, yeah, that in relation to other plant products, they are worse than a lot of them, but nevertheless, they're less harmful to the environment, and indeed less harmful to other animals, living in the natural world, than animal products.
Okay, I think there's about a minute left, or at least the minute that we're interested in.
Cheetahs get their,
No, they don't. They don't get them from a boat. They get them on planes.
Cheetahs get their
and they get them on
avocados?
planes which guzzle up the environment.
Do you eat avocados?
Yes.
But you care about all these millions of bees being killed.
I care about your hypocrisy about the little guys.
Rubbish.
I do.
Most bees are killed because of overuse of pesticides. Most overuse of pesticides
Not true.
is due to the way that
It's
the
in the
land is farmed.
No, that is not.
So he's going through his kind of, I think he read it in the Guardian once, this thing. So he brings that up. So I think we can probably leave that there, because I think it just kind of fizzles out.
I mean, it's kind of, it's not. It's certainly not the way I'd have done an interview with him, to be honest.
Well, I guess there is an element of kind of playing the game in terms of providing what they want, as it were, that kind of stuff. So just to finish off on this thing, then there's one. This is back to the news item. Now, the one bit that people would probably expect me to notice, if I can find it, is where is it? Oh, yeah. Okay. So the Advertising Standards Authority say, although we acknowledge the people would understand the ad was intended as a comment on animal welfare. Right. Now, this again is kind of part of this problem, that the journalists don't know about welfare and rights. And we also, because we're really in a welfare movement more than a rights movement, it's not as though anybody from Viva we're going to kind of try to correct this and say, well, actually, our position is rights, because rights and welfare for most of the big groups, they're much the same thing, really. But
well, I mean,
for me, that's a problem.
It was largely about welfare in that it was about factory farming and zero grazing, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, but I bet you, if you ask Viva, is your campaign a welfare campaign? They'll say no to that.
Oh, I'm sure they would, and I think they'd say, well, look, we're kind of using that issue to attract attention because we know people will be particularly horrified about that. But once we've kind of got their attention, then we'll educate them about veganism. And I think that would probably be Viva's position on it.
Yeah, right. So I'm just getting up our third one then, which is this. If I've got the right one, have I got the right one to do it? Yes. Okay. So here we go. Hundreds of academics call for 100% plant-based meals at UK universities. So we've kind of touched on this before too, haven't we? Really?
Yes. Yeah. And it's good. I'm pleased they've done that, and I'm pleased that there are a number of universities that have already, well, they certainly, passed motions that they're going to, they're going to increase, plant-based options, haven't they? There's quite a number of universities have come on board with this, and so that's it's good as far as it goes.
Yeah, what do you think about on just a technical movement issue here? Plant-based meals, and then open letter back student-led campaign for vegan catering. Do you think it would be better if it was just talking about plant-based and not vegan? I mean, is vegan catering a good phrase to use even? Because it makes people think veganism is a diet, doesn't it?
Well, yes. You see, and I think this is, that's problematic. Something like vegan-friendly catering, would that be better? I tend to talk about food as being vegan-friendly rather than vegan these days for that reason, because
it's just a technical thing, really, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because but the problem with plant-based is that plant-based can
refer to a diet that's largely plants, but not entirely. So plant-based diet isn't necessarily a vegan-friendly diet. I think it's intended to be. This is in, when they're using plant-based here in this article and what the academics were asking for, they are talking about vegan-friendly meals.
No, yeah, but we can't police this, Ronnie, because even if the universities adopt this, the chances are they're going to have cow milk for people, and they.
I think it's more. It says further on in the article that we're not insisting that people are vegan and people are can be allowed to bring their own food and stuff like that. And bring their own milk.
Damien Carrington,
or their dairy milk, or to bring cow's milk.
Not a bad number, that is it? 650.
No, it's very good, and obviously, this is a positive. It is a positive step. But you see, and this would be kind of held up as an example of, well, this is a kind of system change thing. This is like a kind of almost like a trying to create a top-down change where we kind of get the universities to switch to like a plant-based food, and then that in turn, will have an effect on the on the students, because they go along there and they're consuming the plant-based items and stuff like that. That it'll be described as that, won't it? But in a sense, you see, what you got to think is, how all these things come into being in terms of like, what's the process by which a university will decide to switch to plant-based catering? Well, there's going to have to be a decision made on that, which is be based on a vote. So this is going to be voted in by the students or by people involved with the university. This is, there's going to be a vote on this, and those people that vote, they're voting as individuals. So in order to get that vote to succeed, you have to change the views of those people as individuals. Otherwise, they're not going to vote in the right way. So once again, this does come down. There is a really big element of individual change in this in order to kind of get these motions passed.
Well, it's answering you here, though, isn't it? The bit that you pointed out yourself. But first of all, I like the fact that we are acutely aware, as you must be too, of the climate and ecological crisis. And it talks about animal farming and fishing. So I'm glad that they didn't put factory farming in there. Right?
Yes, yeah.
But then this bit that you pointed out, I mean, you're not going to be too happy with that, are you?
What does that say? Can you read it?
It says not vegan. That's okay, the letter said. We are not asking for individual dietary changes. Students and staff can bring whatever food they like onto campus. What we're asking for is institutional disinvestment from meat and dairy.
Well, institutional disinvestment from it, kind of, yeah. I mean, that's a positive thing. It means that, if those establishments are only providing vegan friendly food, then obviously they're making they're not making a contribution towards the meat and dairy, egg industries, fishing industries, are they, through the food that they buy? So that's positive. But you see, it is also important to encourage people to at least consume a vegan friendly diet in their everyday life, and this paragraph is actually harmful to that. It's actually more or less saying, well, yeah, when you're here, like you need to eat a vegan friendly diet, but like when you're not here, it kind of doesn't matter what you eat.
It doesn't even say that, Ronnie.
Or even when you come here, you can bring your own stuff. And kind of where the harm is.
The dodgy line, surely, Ronnie, is we are not asking for individual dietary changes.
Well, the thing is, if they're not asking for individual dietary changes, what are those people going to do when they go home? What are those people going to do in the rest of their life when they're not actually, how many meals are those people going to have, like at the university, and how many meals are they going to have outside of the university, right? All right, when they're consuming their meal at the university, they're not going to be able to kind of contribute to the animal farming industry, etc. But like, if they don't make an individual change, then when they come away from the university, or when their time at the university comes to an end, then they're going to be scoffing away at the animal products, aren't they?
Well, the other way of looking at it, presumably, is that this is going to be like a process. In other words, you've got people who are quite happy to go plant-based and eat plant-based when they're at university. They don't make a big fuss about it. It's no big deal. And then you're going to get the others with their lunchbox, full of, dead animals. And so that's going to create a conversation.
Yes, I think it will, and I think I think this is a positive mood. I just think it's one of these things that could be better than it is, and I think one kind of and that paragraph is unfortunate, and I think that kind of
well, they might have to do it just through kind of, so they don't get kind of legal things and everything that people, it's being draconian.
Well, I think it's the way. I think it's
that line. Surely
I think
we
it's
are
the
not
way.
asking.
I think it's the way. I think it's the way it's put. If it said that, you could say, well, yeah, people will still be allowed to bring their own food if they want, but we hope that what we're doing in terms of the plant-based meals will encourage people to do the same in their personal lives. If it had been worded like that, it would have been far, far better. And using this to encourage people to kind of make a personal change. You see, instead of saying we're not asking people to make a personal change, it could say we hope that this will encourage. We're not forcing people to make a personal change.
Yeah, that would be a lot better. But what about the other bit that we?
Yeah. You see, and it's a bit like kind of they kind of cock it up with these things. It's a bit like, and also, mention the plight of the animals that are farmed and fished. There's no mention of that. It's all about the environment, isn't it? It's all about, and that's important. Yeah, that the animal farming and the fishing industries, they like huge drivers of the climate crisis, and of course, the main victims of the climate crisis aren't humans.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It doesn't say not.
Other animals, but why not? You see, this is where,
well,
and this was really also, my big criticism of Animal Rebellion, who are now Animal Rising, but like when they were Animal Rebellion, they were doing these big actions like the dairy blockading McDonald's. Some of their, probably better actions were done as Animal Rebellion, and they were going on about the climate crisis, but like no mention of the plight of the individual animals. Well, why not mention the individual animals as well? Why not mention the two things?
Well, that leads me to my next question for you, because going back to my first question, which was the plant-based and vegan distinction, I'm a bit worried about this bit. Not vegan, that's okay. We're not asking for individual dietary change. It's making vegan out to be a diet again. So
yes, that's making vegan.
It should be not plant-based. That's okay.
It should be. Yeah, it should be not. Yeah, it should say not plant-based. Yeah, if you're just kind of talking about people's dietary habits, then don't say the word vegan. And I would be much happier with that. Be honest. It's like I there were, some people were kind of didn't like it that when Animal Rebellion were talking about a plant-based future rather than a vegan future. But you see, the way I thought of it, well, what they're doing is asking the government to do something. I mean, like, like the naivety of like asking this government to make any kind of positive change. But there we are. That's what they were doing. And so, the government's not going to. A vegan future is a future where, like, animal rights are recognised and respected, and where animals are liberated from all forms of oppression. Well, that isn't what their campaign was about. Their campaign was about changing the farming system, so that isn't, so that isn't vegan, and that's just to do with diet. So I was pleased they used plant-based in that respect rather than vegan.
It would have been better to have said it there. Just to finish, a couple of bits that I did like was this bit I've highlighted. Universities should see themselves as a microcosm of society, where the spirit of exploration encourages people to try new things, test better options, and assess the consequences. Well, that's true, because obviously we all know that universities used to be very radical places, and they're not anymore.
No,
and then this person says, I think, not quite sure how you pronounce her surname, but Dr. Helen, let's say. However, whenever I've organized university event recently, I've chosen plant-based or vegetarian catering without mentioning it. So that's interesting, plant-based or vegetarian catering. And I've only ever had compliments about the food, never complaints about it. And I think that is true too. And, it's almost as though the least kind of fuss you make of it, the more acceptance you get of it. It's almost like if you got you're going to be eating vegan, folks. That's when they kind of kick off, isn't it? Really.
Well, I think yes. I think you're talking about food, and so because it's just about food and about diet, then it's better to say plant-based. But I think that what happens is this whole thing is like missing an opportunity to say other things. It's missing an opportunity to talk about the importance of individual change, because it isn't just about, because just in terms of plant-based, like we do want everyone to adopt a plant-based diet and not just to eat plant-based at the university. So why discourage that, by the words they've used in that particular paragraph? And secondly, take the opportunity to mention the plight of the animals that are farmed and that are fished, because it's kind of crazy, because that's the kind of number one thing, isn't it? It's like saying, we want to end the slave trade because it causes some kind of economic harm, or because it's not good for the environment. We wouldn't have said that, would we? That wouldn't have been acceptable. The reason that we wanted to end the slave trade was because of the plight of the slaves, isn't it? So that the glaringly obvious number one reason.
Well, if you're putting the environmental issues first, then obviously your claims making is going to be based on that. But and then it would be a reversal of what we want. But we don't even have that, because it's not part of what we want. I mean, that the part that we would like them to include at least somewhere is not even there.
Yeah, I think the problem is because it's human centric, isn't it? It's all about, let's, kind of, we want to protect the environment. We want to stop the climate crisis because that's like kind of causing harm to like humans. And so the reason why we want to kind of switch to plant-based meals at universities is to stop this thing that's like harming our species, you see. And so it isn't like to do with the other animals at all, in a sense. It's about
it's like the usual thing we used to get in the 80s, where it was all conservation. Save the whale because I want my kids to see.
Yeah, exactly. But we're never going to get anywhere until we challenge that. It's a bit like the emperor's got no clothes, that everyone was frightened to say the emperor had no clothes. And it's that situation. That what we've got to challenge is speciesism. What we've got to challenge is the idea that, this false immoral idea that humans are somehow more important than other sentient animals. We've got to challenge that. I mean, say this had been, we don't do that with other forms of oppression. With racism, that isn't, that's talked about. It's wrong. It's wrong to, oppress people of other ethnicities. It's wrong to oppress people of who are a different color. Sexism. It's wrong to oppress people of another sex. We say that. That's quite openly said.
Being racist towards immigrants is bad for the environment.
Yeah, well, but that wouldn't be said, would it? Or bad for the economy? We'd say that it's racist. Why are we frightened to say that, or why are some people, or a lot of people, frightened to say that in relation to the oppression of other animals by humans? Why are they why are all these other reasons for it not being a good idea put forward, and not the fundamental reason why it's wrong? And I think we've got to, we've got to kind of bite the bullet on this. We can't be. We have to speak loud and clear that speciesism is wrong,
and be honest and tell them, tell people what our position is.
Yeah,
what our position is. I think
it's a social justice issue. You see, it's not that veganism is about that justice, right? It's not about the environment. It's about the environment in the sense that, where human activity, in harming the environment, then in turn results in the oppression of other animals. That's a vegan issue, but that is still a justice issue. It's not, and it's not an environmental issue. Veganism is about justice, and all of this is about justice, and that we need to be saying that loud and clear.
Well, I suppose it's interesting. You could argue, I suppose, we won't do this now, but I mean, we could argue, I suppose, that health inequalities is an issue of justice as well. People having access to healthy foods, people being condemned to eat the junk food stuff and all that. Yeah, so
that's and not just being condemned to eat the junk food, but being encouraged to eat the junk food.
Yeah, educated too. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and also because this stuff is kind of like is produced so cheaply.
And that would create kind of things about monitoring advertising, and because I mean you don't get healthy stuff advertised, do you? I mean when have you last seen an advert on TV for a carrot? I mean you just don't see it, do you? So
no, not at all. And what happens is people have become addicted to these unhealthy foods. To food that's high in sugar, high in salt, high in fat. These foods are highly addictive, and people have been encouraged to become addicted to those foods in the interests of the people that produce them. And the government is on the side of the people that produce them, which is why the government is very, very reluctant to bring in any legislation controlling the advertising of those products.
Right. Well, Ronnie, we're on an hour and 32 minutes, and I'm just about to have a coughing fit. And
yeah.
So this might be a good moment, as they say in legal dramas.
Yes.
People, thank you very much for being with us. Actually, I would be interested in the comments. If you're watching the recording, what's your view about this distinction between plant-based and vegan? Is it good for us to make it?
Yeah, there was a comment I noticed, Roger, and it was... somebody asked what you were going to do.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's no comment. That's
did you have a bucket, or were you going to cause damage to some equipment there?
It is a legitimate question, but it's not going to get answered. Not now, anyway. So,
right. A future, watch every future edition.
Yeah. Look out for a time tunnel. A posthumous time tunnel. That's what I'll do. Right, Ronnie. So we shall be back. We are confident, but of course, it depends on if
we are still alive.